Shalom, shalom. Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rachak Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And I wanted to go into Second Ezra, the 14th chapter. Slacky, let me make sure something here. Might have skipped the chapter. All right, so I mean, I don't know why the spirit didn't hit me on that, but really, I might have wanted to go into Second Ezra 13 today, but I ended up last night I read through 14, so no one will going through 14 today, and then if the spirit permits, we'll do 13, afterwards. But anyway, this is the book of Second Ezra, chapter 14, verse 1. It says, "And it came to pass on the third day, I sat under an oak, and behold, there came a voice out of a bush over against me, and said, Esdras, Esdras. And I said, Here am I, Lord. And I stood up upon my feet. Then said he unto me, In the bush did I manifestly reveal myself unto Moses, and talked with him, when my people served in Egypt. And I sent him and this is when Moses had fled, and he was in the land of Midian 40 years. Salakia, and then the Lord, when Moses was basically tending to the sheep, that he took the sheep out. The Lord basically spoke to him in the burning bush, but then the bush wasn't consumed by the fire. So it says here, and I sent him and led my people out of Egypt, and brought him up to the mount where I held him by me a long season. Which is where the Lord basically gave Moses the the stone, the tablets, the commandments, the blueprints for the tabernacle, for the ark, for Aaron's garment, for how the priest would be consecrated, the laws, all of these things. It's like, yeah, cool. So it says here, verse 5, it says, and told him many wondrous things, and shewed him the secrets of the times and the end, and commanded him, saying, These words shalt thou declare, and these shalt thou hide. So the Lord showed Moses a lot of things, up on that mountain. Okay, a lot of revelations, a lot of secrets, a lot of things that had, taken place. And like it says, of the end. So it says, These words shalt thou declare, and these shalt thou hide. And now I say unto thee, that thou lay up in thy heart the signs that I have shewed, and dreams that thou hast seen, and the interpretations which thou hast heard. Yeah, because when you read in the previous chapters, you had the angel Uriel, that would come down and speak to Ezra and Esdras, and show him the different signs and visions, and then give him the breakdowns or the interpretations of it, right? Like we read in Second Ezra, the 10th chapter, when Ezra saw the woman that was mourning for her son, and then she screamed. This bright light basically came from off of her. She screamed with a loud voice, and then she disappeared. And all of a sudden, this huge city appeared. And then Ezra called, and the angel answered and basically explained to him what it meant. And just like in Second Ezra 11, he had the dream, the vision about the eagle, and then in the 12th chapter, the angel basically explained to him what it meant. So That's why it mentions the dreams which he had and the interpretations that he heard. So it says, verse 9, for thou shalt be taken away from all, and from henceforth thou shalt remain with my son, and with such as be like thee until the times be ended. And because ultimately Ezra was going to die, but he was going to come back again. But this goes to show you that Yahweh, so who was my son? For those that want to be basically New Testament only, and or whatever they want to, Old Testament, however they want to go with it and talk about the Lord's son, that's the New Testament kind of thing. Well, he's mentioned in the book of Second Ezra, not just here. So who's my son? Who's that? So anyway, as it says, for thou shalt be taken away from all, and from henceforth. So Ezra was going to be taken away from pretty much everybody there. And from henceforth, meaning from now on, thou shalt remain with my son. Well, Yahushua wasn't physically on the scene at that point. So where was he? All right. In the spirit world. It says, and such as be like thee until the times be ended. And then eventually Ezra would come back on the scene. And there's a scripture that talks about it, that until the number of seeds is accomplished or fulfilled within you, meaning there's a number of, every 3 to 4 generations, a number of times that Ezra would have to keep coming, or really everybody has to keep coming back on the earth, up until Yahushua comes back the second time and changes us. And he's pretty much going to end that cycle for us. So we're not going to have to keep on coming back in the reincarnation, because we're going to live forever. It says, for the world hath lost his youth, and the times begin to wax old. Yeah, because when the world was first made, everything was fresh. It was in strength, right? Grapes were much bigger than they are now. When you read in the scriptures, it tells you it took 2 strong men to carry a cluster of grapes. Okay, and everything was fresh, looking new and good, with nutrients and all of that, oxygen, trees, even the people. But as it says, and the times begin to wax old, for the world is divided into 12 parts. Now, from verse 11 on to verse 12 is dealing with time. Okay, the 12 parts is dealing with time, in 1,000-year periods. Okay, so the world is divided into 12 parts, and and the 10 parts of it are already gone, and half of a 10th part. So in essence, roughly around 12,000 years, you have the 10 parts of it already gone, which would be about 10,000 years, and then you have and half of a 10th part, which is 500 years. Okay, so you got 10,000 500, and that would leave, let me make sure. I already said I'm not got the math. All right, so let me make sure of that. 10,000 and a half, the half part. Yeah, that would leave or a little over 1,500 or 2,500, if I'm doing it correctly. But anyway, as it says, and 10 parts of it are already gone, so you can count, 10 out of the 12 already gone, which would leave you with that 2,000 remaining. And then it says, and a half of the 10th part. It says, and there remaineth that which is after the half of the 10th part. Now therefore set thine house in order. Let's see, 10, 12 minus 9 is 3, 2.5, 2,500. All right, cool. So yeah, Salakia, I believe in essence what it's saying is the half of the 10th part, meaning that you got, if the 10th part is 10,000 years, the half of the 10th would be 500, right? So that would be about 9,500 years. Okay, which if you take 12,000 years and you take out 9,500, that leaves you with about 2,500 years. Now Ezra was on the scene roughly around 500 years before Yahushua came on the scene. Okay, when you read when you read in Second Esdras, the 3rd chapter, which I'm gonna get, I read over it before, but also we can do this right here. You read in not Ezra Miller. when you read in Second Ezra, the third chapter, it tells you that Ezra was in Babylon when he received these visions, right? It says he laid troubled after he had seen the destruction of Jerusalem. Now they place Ezra. When you look up Ezra, Slovakia, when you look up Ezra here in the Wikipedia, they place him at 4. It says 480 to 440 BCE, which doesn't really line up with what is written here in Second Ezra, the third chapter. All right, because if you go right here, Second Ezra's chapter 3. All right, so it says here, Second Ezra chapter 3 and 1, in the 30th year after the reign of the city, I was in Babylon, right? And lay troubled upon my bed, and my thoughts came up over my head. For I saw the desolation of Sion, and the wealth of them that dwell at Babylon. So Ezra is in Babylon, right? And he said, in the 30th year after the reign of after the ruin of the city. So when you actually look up in the history, the Babylonians took down Jerusalem in 586 BC, right? So if you go 30 years into the future, right, 30 years after Jerusalem was destroyed, that's from 586, that would be 576, 566, 556, right? And the Babylonian Empire didn't go down to about what, let me see, Neo Babylonian Empire. Right. So it didn't go down, it says here, till about 43. Let's double check on that. Oh, Slack at 539. Yep. So as you can see here, it says here, the Neo-Babylonian Empire and its ruling Chaldean dynasty were short-lived, conquered after less than a century by the Persian Achaemenid Empire in 539 BC, right? So from now, remember, when you're dealing with BC, when time is moving forward, like when we're going more into the future, the numbers are counting down. Okay. So 30 years from 586, when the city was ruined, we came down to what, 556, right? From 586 to 556, that's about 30 years. So 556, that means that the Babylonian Empire is still in power and didn't go down until the Achaemenid Empire took them down in 539 BC. So that means that at this point where Ezra is receiving these visions, he's alive during the time of the Neo-Babylonian Empire. So they, when you look in the Wikipedia, they place him around the time of the the Persian Empire, which he was alive during that time, but he was also according to what is written in Second Ezra chapter 3, alive during the Neo-Babylonian Empire. All right, meaning that the Neo-Babylonian Empire roughly 500 years before Yahushua comes on the scene. Okay, as we just read right here. Because if it went down in 539, remember, as you go forward in time, the numbers count down. So 539 BC means 539 years before C, right? Before Christ, or 539 years before zero. And then you go into AD. Okay, so Ezra would have to be roughly around 500 years before Yahushua was born. Okay, and we are roughly 2,000 and some change years after Yahushua was born, after he was on the scene, right? Because we're in 2020. So if you add from the time of Ezra up until our time now, that's roughly about 2,500 years, roughly. Okay, because there's certain scriptures that deal exactly with time, but then there's some that deal circa. Okay, like when you deal with the Babylonian Empire, in the scriptures it says 70 years, but when you do the math, it comes up a little less than 70 years. So Sometimes it's exact, but sometimes it's around that time. All right. So going back to Second Esdras chapter 14, as we read, the world is divided into 12 parts, and 10 parts of it are already gone, and half of a tenth part. All right. Half of a tenth part. Now, sometimes there's scriptures that are like, it's pretty straightforward, but because of the way it's written in the Old English, what can also be advised is if you just type in, we usually do this with the blue letter, but the Apocrypha doesn't have blue letter. But all you can do is type in the verse that you're looking for. In this case, Second Esdras 14, verse 11, and then you should be able to find other translations. Some of them go off, but you can roughly get the the overall what it's trying to say over there. So let's see if we can find. All right, so you have like NRSV. It says, "For the age is divided into 12 parts, and 9 of its parts have already passed, as well as half of the 10th part." See, so 2 of its parts remain besides half of the 10th part. Okay, so when you read it in the Old English, it may sound a little confusing. That's why I had to stop for a second to do the math, because it first says the world is divided into 12 parts, right? 10 parts of it are already gone, and half of a tenth part. But really, what it means is 9 parts are gone, and the half of the tenth part is gone. Okay, so that gives you 9,500 is already gone. But the way it's worded, you may wait, how can 10 parts already be gone and half of a tenth part? That doesn't make sense, right? But when you read it, as you can see, even in the other translations, it's really saying that you got 9 parts, which is about 9,000 years already passed, as well as half of a tenth part. So you add, if one part is 1,000 years, half of that is 500 years. Okay, so at this point, and I hope that you're following along. I know it sounds a little, so much parts and times, but in essence, if you have roughly 12,000 years, and 9,000 years are already gone, and half of a tenth part, that's 9,500 years that are gone at this time where Ezra is on the scene. It says, "And there remaineth that which is after the half of the tenth part." So when you take out 9,500 from the 12,000, you're left with roughly 2,500, which, as I explained, would make sense because from Ezra to Yahushai is 500 years, and roughly from Yahushai to our time is 2,000 years. So it says, verse 13, "Now therefore set thine." So if you want to know the age of the earth or of the planet, this is Second Ezra 14, 11, and 12. And this cuts the whole millions of years old kind of thing. That's not valid. What They don't have any solid proof or basis to go off of when they say the earth is a million years old or 50,000 years old. All right. So it says, verse 13, "Now therefore set thine house in order, and reprove thy people, comfort such of them as be in trouble, and now renounce corruption. Let go from thee mortal thoughts, cast away the burdens of man, put off now the weak nature." And often we'll go into, like we'll hit this chapter, but we'll really highlight some of these key verses right here. Okay, but as the angel is telling him, which also is something we can apply to ourselves, is letting go of mortal thoughts, because mortal is death. Okay, the carnal mind. You want to let go of those mortal thoughts, because as the scriptures say, our conversation is in heaven, right? So the mind that we carry, the mindset that we carry, has to be mixed with faith. Okay, and always, pretty much in the spirit. All right, of immortality. It says, "Cast away the burdens of man, put off now the weak nature, and set aside the thoughts that are most heavy unto thee, and haste thee to flee from these times. For yet greater evils than those which thou hast seen thou hast seen happen shall be done hereafter. Okay, meaning that the things that you've seen already is going to be much worse in the future that's coming. It says, "For look how much the world shall be weaker through age," which, as we can see, that's the case now, right? The people live shorter lives. People are weaker physically, mentally. Trees, the plants, the whole planet is weaker. Everything is at a lower vibration than it was in the past. It says, so much the more shall evils increase upon them that dwell therein. Okay, so much the more shall evils increase. So as the world will become weaker through age, right? As time moves forward, the world is becoming weaker. So much the more shall evils increase upon them that dwell therein. So as time moves forward, things are going to get more and more wicked. From Ezra's time up until now, things have gotten drastically wicked. All right. It says, "For the time is fled far away, and leasing is hard at hand. For now hasteth the vision to come, which thou hast seen." And leasing, when you go into it, it basically goes into falsehoods, which makes sense because as we are approaching the end, things are going to be more wicked and more evil. With the devil in rulership, of course, falsehoods is going to be hard at hand, right? For now hasteth the vision to come, which thou hast seen. So the things that Ezra saw, second Ezra's 13, 14, 15, or 16, even 11, at his time, that all was in the future. And it did come to pass. It says here, "Then answered I before thee and said, Behold, Lord, I will go as thou hast commanded me, and reprove the people which are present, but they that shall be born afterward, who shall admonish them? Thus the world is set in darkness, and they that dwell therein are without light." Yeah. So Ezra's saying, okay, I'm gonna do what you're telling me. Yeah, I'm gonna correct these people and reprove them. But the ones that are here alive now, but what about those that are, that come after, that are born? What about the future generations? Who's gonna admonish them? It says, the world is set in darkness, and they that dwell therein are without light. For thy law is burnt. Therefore, no man knoweth the things that are done of thee, or the work that shall begin. Yeah, because at this time, Ezra being a priest, he had knowledge of the law, statutes, and commandments, right? But when the Babylonians besieged Jerusalem and they destroyed the walls and they burnt the temple, what was in the temple? The laws, the scrolls, the writings. So all of that was destroyed. So that's why Ezra is saying, okay, well, in the future, if they don't have these records, therefore no man knoweth the things that are done of thee. The records of what you've done, who you are, what your requirement, all these things, right? Verse 22, it says, "But if I have found grace before thee, send the Holy Spirit into me, and I shall write all that hath been done in the world since the beginning, which were written in thy law, that men may find." So that means if it was written in the law, that means that what? Moses was also showed all the things that were done since the world began. Because Moses being on the scene, how is it that he's able to have records of Abraham, records of of Jacob, records of of Adam? And not only that, but when you read the Torah and you read the records of the accounts that happen in Genesis, it's not just records from a third person's perspective, like, okay, and this person did this and this person did that. No, when you read it, the way they thought, right? How somebody thought, what thought process these men went through before making the decisions they did, those things were recorded. Ask yourself the conversation between Jacob and the Lord when Jacob fled from Esau on before he got to Laban or Laban, when he was at I think he was at Bethel. I think that's where he was. Yeah, Bayaf Allah, house of God. When the Lord basically showed him, the ladder and all of that, who was there to keep a record of that? In that third person form, and presented all the way down. Who was there to keep a record of how Jacob was able to still overcome while dealing with Laban? You know, so that basically the spirit of the Lord had to reveal that onto these men, because Moses as himself wasn't in the past there with Jacob to have seen him do these things for him to write it down. So the Lord had to have revealed that to him, just like we're reading of here in Second Esdras, as the Lord is going to reveal all these things to Ezra so that they can be recorded again. So it says here, verse 22, but if I have found grace before thee, send the Holy Spirit into me, and I shall write all that hath been done in the world since the beginning, which were written in thy law, that men may find thy path, and that they which will live in the latter days may live. Because we would have some direction. We would have Romans 15:4. What was written aforetime was written for our learning. When you read the New Testament, they're always quoting what? The Old Testament. As saith the prophet Isaiah, as the prophet said, as is written. Those are them quote. Today we'll say, that the precept that says, or today we'll say, Jeremiah 17:9. Well, back then you didn't have book, chapter, verse, so you'll hear them say, as is written, or as was said by the prophet. Boom. I am one crying in the wilderness. So they were doing the same thing we're doing today, using the writings they had to continue to teach. And then after that, you had the testament of their time. That's what we have as a New Testament. So did the apostles have the New Testament during the time of the New Testament? No, because they were forming the New Testament. All right. So it says, verse 23, and he answered me, saying, go thy way, gather the people together, and say unto them that they seek thee not for 40 days. But look thou prepare thee many box trees, and take with thee Sariah, Dabria, Selemia, Echinus, and Asiel, these 5 which are ready to write swiftly, and come hither, and I shall light a candle of understanding in thine heart, which shall not be put out till the things be performed which thou shalt begin to write. So if the Lord can put the spirit on a man to where he can recall everything. When you watch, for those that have seen the movie The Book of Eli, this is pretty much what they tried to depict at the end. When what's this guy's name? The actor, what's his name? Denzel Washington. He was laying there. He had his head shaved, his face, all his facial hair shaved off, and he was just laying there speaking all the things. And then you you had the dude that was basically typing it up. Basically, he was speaking the scriptures as it had been from the beginning, the record. And then you had the other guy that was writing it. I think it was on like a typewriter or something like that, like them old things that you press on to get. Yeah, that's what. Where do you think they got that from? Now, if the Lord could do this to Ezra, is it so impossible that the Lord can reveal to us his true name? Is it so impossible that the Lord can reveal to us the Hebrew? Is it so impossible that the Lord can open the eyes of a man to go in a certain direction and to lead other men? Like Elder Abba Bivens? No, it's not impossible. When people get overwhelmed with that, because they'll think, well, how is that possible? Well, then you're not speaking with faith. If you feel like that's too impossible for the Lord to do, to bring us back to our heritage from a point where we didn't, you got to start somewhere, you know. So it says, verse 26, and when thou hast when thou hast done, some things shalt thou publish, and some things shalt thou shew secretly to the wise. Tomorrow this honor, or Salakia, tomorrow this hour shalt thou begin to write. Then went I forth as he commanded, and gathered all the people together, and said, Hear these words, O Israel. Our fathers at the beginning were strangers in Egypt, from whence they were delivered, and received the law of life, which they kept not, which ye also have transgressed after them. And that's why we ended up in the Babylonian captivity, because we transgressed those laws. It says, and then was the land, even the land of Zion, parted among you by lot, which but your fathers, yeah, because every tribe had an inheritance. Sheesh, damn. Says here, U.S. inflation reached 9.1% in June, its highest rate in nearly 41 years. That's pretty good. Pretty bad for the world, but let's go into that's very close to double digits. All right. So going on, it says here, the land was then was the land, even the land of Sion, parted among you by lot. But your fathers and ye yourselves have done unrighteousness, and have not kept the ways which the highest commanded you. And forasmuch as he is a righteous judge, he took from you, he took from you in time the thing that he had given you. And now are ye here, and your brethren among you. Yeah, and because we weren't in the land anymore. The Lord took us out of that land. He took away the hedge, the covering, and all of those things, because he said he would if we transgressed his laws. And if you notice, that's been the main controversy between the nation of Israel and the Lord, is it's Israel being disobedient, constantly going back to the same problem, which is you going off, and then you come back, and then you go off again, and here we are back at this problem again. It says, and now are ye here, and your brethren among you. Therefore, if so be that ye will subdue your own understanding and reform your hearts, ye shall be kept alive, and after death ye shall obtain mercy. Yeah, because why does it say after death ye shall obtain mercy? Doesn't mean that after you die, you're going to go, then the Lord will say, I'm going to have mercy on you, so you're not going to hell, you're going to heaven. No, what it means is after death, matter of fact, this is why it says that. Let's go to what the apostle, what is it? Is it Apostle Paul? Let's see. Shall judgment. There's a scripture that I read. I hope I'm not thinking of two scriptures here. Let me see. Although it might probably be the same chapter. Let's see. After death, judgment. Apocrypha. Yep. Never mind. It's the same chapter. Cool. But I'm still gonna get what the Apostle Paul had said. I think it's 2 Corinthians chapter 5 and 10, or is it 10 and 5? Yep, 5 and 10. This is 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 10. It says, "For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Hamashiach, that everyone may receive the things done in his body according to that he hath done, whether it be good or bad." What does that mean? That means that after you die, we all appear before the judgment seat of Hamashiach, which is in the spirit world. And if there's a judgment seat there, what happens there? You get judgment. You get your judgment sentence, right? Like Paul says, that everyone may receive the things done in his body according to that he have done. So while you were in this body, while your spirit was in this body on the planet Earth, based on the actions you did, right, according to that he have done, whether it was good or bad, that's how your judgment is going to be based on. And that judgment is going to be for the next time you come back on the earth. That's the judgment you're going to serve out. So when you go before Yahushua after you die, you get your judgment sentence. And based on your actions, it could be harsh or it could not. But then you're going to come back and serve that sentence. So that's why Ezra is telling them here that if you, therefore, if so be that ye will subdue your own understanding, you don't follow what you think is right, but you follow the ways the Lord has set, and reform your hearts, right? Let's look up the word reform. Reform. It says make changes in, right? In order to improve it, make better, improve, right? Because he was previously just talking to them about how their forefathers were going off, how that ended us up in this situation, right? So he's saying here, if you're going to change your ways and improve your thoughts, ye shall be kept alive, and after death, after you die, ye shall obtain mercy. Why? Because after you die, you go before the judgment seat, and if you have lived a good life, you will obtain mercy. So when you come back on the earth again, your life is not going to be hell. But if you haven't, then you're going you're going to come back and you might be crippled or you might be blind or you might just have to go through a really, really, really tough life. Everything you do is going to fail and you're going to have trouble and you're going to struggle a lot, or whatever other kinds of judgment the Lord has. He says, for after death shall the judgment come. And people can easily misunderstand this and say, oh, that means that after you die, that's when you get judged, whether you go to heaven or hell. No, judgment is not executed in the spirit world. Judgment is sentenced in the spirit world, but it's executed here on earth. Okay? When you die, you go get your judgment sentence in the spirit world, but when you come back on the earth is when your judgment is executed. Your sentence is carried out here on the earth. That's why King Solomon said that the place of judgment was under the sun. Okay? So when Ezra says, for after death shall the judgment come, when what? We shall live again. See? So after you die, you go and get your judgment sentence. And then when we live again, reincarnation, and then shall the names of the righteous be manifest, and the works of the ungodly shall be declared. Because when you come back again, you're going to serve out that judgment, and it's either going to be one way or another way. It's either going to be a harsh, painful life. You might come into a body that's defiled, or you might not. You might come and be blessed. Okay? Because judgment comes in both sides. You can get rewarded or you can get punished. So it says, verse 36, let no man therefore come unto me now, nor seek after me these 40 days. So I took the 5 men, as he commanded me, and went into the field and remained there. And the next day, behold, a voice called me, saying, Esdras, open thy mouth and drink that I give thee to drink. Then opened I my mouth, and behold, he reached me a full cup, which was full as it were with water, but the color of it was like fire. And I drank, and I took it and drank, and when I had drunk of it, my heart uttered understanding. It wasn't his literal heart, the organ, but the word heart in the Hebrew is lag, which means his mind. Okay. It says, because where does understanding come from? It comes from your mind. So when he says my heart uttered understanding and wisdom grew in my breast, is metaphorical. He's referring to his mind. Wisdom and understanding don't come from your organ. If that's the case, when somebody has a heart transplant, all their understanding and wisdom should go to the next individual. But clearly that's not what happens. When somebody says I love you from the bottom of my heart, that's not from their literal organ, it's from their mind. Your love really comes from your mind. Okay? It says, and wisdom grew in my breast, for my spirit strengthened my memory. That's why the flesh profiteth nothing. That's why it is the spirit that quickeneth. See? He said, for my spirit strengthened my memory, and my mouth was opened and shut no more. So he was speaking continuously. The highest gave understanding unto the 5 men, and they wrote the wonderful visions of the night that were told, which they knew not. And they sat. So these men were blessed because they got a lot of things revealed unto them as well. It says, and they sat 40 days, and they wrote in the day, and at night they ate bread. As for me, I spake in the day, and I held not my tongue by night. So there was a special spirit, almost like Esdras was in a trance, and he was just speaking and speaking and speaking and speaking. It says, in 40 days they wrote 204 books. And it came to pass, when the 40 days were filled, that the highest spake, saying, the first that thou hast written, publish openly, meaning make it public openly, that the worthy and unworthy may read it. But keep the 70 last, that thou mayest deliver them only to such as be wise among the people. This is where you get people talking about the 70 laws verses from. Well, what about the 70 laws verses? Don't worry about the 70 laws verses. Worry about what the Lord is giving you now. The book, there's what? The book of Jubilee, the book of the wars of the Lord, the book of this, the book of that. We don't have access to that right now. All the ones that, for the most part, you're gonna find, it ain't gonna be, there's no way to verify that that's it or not. And you shouldn't really be too worried about that, because right now you need to worry about the book that's gonna lead you to salvation. And everything we need to gain salvation has been given us in what the Lord has given us access to. All right. The scriptures we have now, Apocrypha included. That's where we are dealing with. That's how, Lord willing, if we're of the elect, we're gonna come back to our heritage and gain salvation. All right. So what if you find the 70 laws verses or whatnot? Does that mean automatically you're going to be delivered? And does it mean that because you haven't found those 70 laws verses that you're not going to be delivered? No. So it says, but keep the 70 last, that thou mayest deliver them only to such as be wise among the people. For in them is the spring of understanding, the fountain of wisdom, and the stream of knowledge. And I did so. And that's it. All right. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Second Esdras chapter 14. Like I said, I don't know why I skipped over 13. It didn't hit me in the mind, but it's a spirit anyway. So Lord willing, the spirit permits, I'll go back and then go into 13 and then go forward, however the spirit permits. But let's see. All right. This is Yeharles, Judah, Israel, Colossians 3:16. Let the word of Hamashiach dwell in you richly in all wisdom, teaching and admonishing one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing with grace in your hearts to the Lord. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Yep. So with that, I'm going to end it here. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rachak Kodash. Until next time, Shalom.